James Matthewson. He's a former Labour Party spokesman and official and joins us right now. A very good afternoon to you, James.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you very much. Oh, that was a weary. Oh, I know how this is going to go. No, I heard that.
I promise it wasn't.
I heard the tone there. Anyway, James, thank you so much for joining. Always good to talk to you. Can we just talk about this apparent plan being considered by Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary? He was asked about it in the social media around today about households in different regions being subject to different pricing depending on, wind generation and other things in their local areas. So it would mean in the south we got a lot more people and not as many, wind turbines and the like. That actually we could end up in the south where I am right now paying more for our electricity than someone, say, in Scotland where you got plenty of wind turbines. How is that fair?
Yeah, it's an interesting way for the story to be presented, and I think this comes from the Sun newspaper where it's been kind of predominantly ran today, because initially the idea behind this programme is to address long-held concerns in parts of the country, especially areas like Scotland where, a lot of the independence campaign had a lot of energy behind it, forgive the pun, from, issues like this, where they said, we produce a lot of stuff and we don't get the benefit of it. We don't see the benefit of it. Of course, I believe that devolution does deal out a fair deal to Scotland. However, there are people in other parts, regions, counties of England. I'm from Northumberland, it's one of the biggest counties in England, generates a lot of energy because of its wind turbine capacity. And people who have to live near these things, because obviously of, the problem of NIMBYism and all the rest of it, lots of people get frustrated living near energy infrastructure. And the idea is to try and give them some discount. And it's not about trying to, lower costs across the board for everyone. It's just about trying to give a discount to people who have to endure living near in energy.
I'm all in favour of that. Like, if you want to, if people are going to be disrupted by a new airport runway or electricity generation, nuclear power plant, anything, I'm all for local people getting a discount in their bills for that. That seems to me to be very reasonable. That's, basically paying them for the disruption. But that's not what this story is about. This story is quite clearly about actually having these, energy supplies being paid for on a different basis. And we're always told on this basis, we'll all end up paying less. Same reason. Have a smart meter, you'll end up paying less for your electricity. On the contrary, these are about the ability to have price surging, aren't they? I mean, I just doesn't seem to be reasonable. I mean, okay, Scotland, they might produce more of the wind power on the occasional days when it's windy and we don't have to rely on gas to produce our electricity. But actually, the south produces most of the wealth in this country. So, and we don't get the benefit of that. We're paying loads of taxes. So why should the south have to pay more for the electricity?
Well, you can produce all the wealth you like and not have the power on, Julia. But, this is...
we could do both. It's what other first world countries managed to do, James.
I think this is an attempt, whether you believe cynically or otherwise, in the Labour Party, in Ed Miliband's department.
No, I
especially,
don't.
This attempt to try and address... regional disputes, north-south divides, all the rest of it. But of course, the PR today is not what they would have wanted from it because it just exacerbates that now.
Do you know what would help the North and the Midlands and Scotland? It's bring back manufacturing. You can only do that if you've got cheap and affordable, plentiful, reliable, secure energy. And you need fossil fuels for that. And Ed Miliband is opposed to that.
Well, no, I think, I've long held the view that there could be a green industrial revolution.
I know, God bless you.
Across swathes of the north. We
God
could
bless
be
you for that.
Building EVs and building all those
brilliant.
things in our community.
We could absolutely build electric vehicles cheaper than the Chinese can do with cheap slave labour and fossil fuel coal-powered factories. We could absolutely do that.
I mean, the thing is...
You're living in cloud cuckoo land.
There's premium markets. There's all sorts of markets with energy. But those communities that are, like the ones that I come from in Northumberland, where they were devastated after the closing of the pits, after the closing of, the fossil fuel industries that kept those communities alive, they should have been transitioned. If we believed in green energy as much as we believe in fossil fuels, then we would show that by giving the investment in those communities and letting them build them.
Well, you wouldn't have to give the investment because companies would be wanting to set up their factories because it was affordable and possible to do, and they don't because it's not. Because our industrial prices are 4 times that of America and 50% more than that in the rest of Europe.
Well, coal mines were subsidised for a long time, you know.
Yeah, I find this very strange about the Labour Party. The sort of the lauding of coal miners, you know, as this wonderful job. Yeah, let's pay men to work underground in horrific conditions and die at the age of 60 from the lung condition. I mean, yeah, what a great life that was. We should
You don't need to tell me. You don't need to tell me. I mean, that was the last thing I wanted to do.
Thank God we don't have men down the pit anymore. Thank God.
Yeah, I'm pleased. It's just the transition and the way that it happened, Julia, as you know, it could have been done a lot
There's
better.
something in between sending men down the pit and asking the wind to blow on days when it doesn't blow and hoping that it does. Right, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about something which was very much in the Labour manifesto about there was going to be no return to, you know, to the EU and to free movement. Labour was very, very clear about that. But what a surprise. The former shadow Brexit secretary who spent the best part of 4 years trying to stop Brexit from happening after that 2016 vote. What a surprise. A little bit of movement by the back door. We've already got this idea of having sort of dynamic alignment with EU standards on agriculture and other goods, and basically being a rule taker, not part of being the rule maker. But also, it's now been confirmed by Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, that there is this plan that being looked at as part of deals with EU for a closer relationship to allow 18 to 30-year-olds from EU to come and live and work in the UK, and from the UK to go and live and work in the EU. This is simply freedom of movement by the back door, isn't it?
No, I think it's it's the idea of new schemes. And this was the thing with Brexit. Like, we've had Brexit, we've had that situation brought in. Everything, or well, not everything, perhaps everybody wanted the Brexiteers wanted happened. But you had Brexit supporting governments. The government still in principle supports being outside of the EU and the bloc.
In principle.
In total. But in principle, but of course, at the same time, there are always going to be new plans and new ideas and new schemes. This is a new one, so it should be considered as such. There are lots of people calling out for it. It has merits. If I was a young person, I would certainly support it. Not that I'm not a young person, but, you know, if I was one of these young people,
sort of. But again, we know, but those are the people who were travelling over from, you know, Eastern European countries to get work here. Now, there's some talk that the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is saying, well, you make these visas for basically less than a year, because then if it's less than a year, it doesn't have to count as an immigration statistic. But you're still talking about, let's face it, there are more people who want to come here for work from Europe than the sons and daughters of the well-to-do Islington dinner party class, whose children want to go and have a nice little job working in, you know, in an Italian cafe or wherever for a year. I mean, you know, that's the reality. Is actually this will still mean young people coming to this country from abroad, competing with our young people in terms of getting those starter jobs, in terms of, you know, a lot of jobs in the hospitality and elsewhere. And that is going to be an issue for our young people.
I don't believe so, and I don't think it's competition. I mean, on my street alone, I've got 4 pubs. Every single one of them has got a big sign out the front at the moment, desperate. They're desperate for people to come and work and come and pull pints because they haven't got anyone. And that's a university city. Edinburgh's a university city, you know, so you've got plenty of students kicking about. Of course, those students, you know, when they're wealthier, they don't tend to want to work. And look, I get your point about, you know, the Islington elite and all the rest of it. But I know people who, you know, were from very limited means, who had a great time going in interrailing in Europe. It helped them develop in their careers in many ways.
You can do that. No, but you can do that now.
Yeah, but it's about just opening that up.
You can go to the EU for up to 6 months, not a problem.
Yeah, but it's about creating other opportunities in the other direction as well. We need those people.
Well, it's not the job of Labour government to help the people of Romania or Poland or Germany. Or that's not their job.
It's about helping us. It's about helping our industry. About helping those 4 pubs on my street.
Well, you know, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Why don't we, first of all, instead of bringing in cheap labour from abroad, because presumably if those jobs paid well enough, people would want to take them. Why don't we make sure that people will take those jobs in those pubs? Because frankly, they're not entitled to benefits if they're not working.
Yeah. The thing is, Julia, if you make work mandatory in that sense, or force somebody into a role and take away their choice altogether, that's called slavery. It's not called.
No, it's not. No, it's not. We're not. I wouldn't force anyone to go and do that job or that pub to hire that particular person. I'd simply say, hello, young person who apparently thinks they don't have to work. We know like 1 in 8 people are basically, you know, are long-term sick apparently under the age of, I think, 24. I'm sorry. We've got so many people who are leaving education, who haven't got a job, aren't in training. They need to be working. A benefit shouldn't be an option, and they will take a job and they will turn up on time when there is no other option. And we need to, I mean, if parents aren't going to teach those skills and schools aren't teaching those skills, life will teach them those skills.
Wow.
And instead of just saying, we'll just pay taxes to have millions of our own people sitting on the sofa all day, not contributing, we'll import people from abroad. That doesn't do anyone any good.
I mean, you won't be surprised to know I disagree.
Why? Why do you disagree, though? Why do you want our young people left on the scrap heap?
They're not left on the scrap heap.
Yeah, they are.
It's about choice, and if they're choosing
choice,
this, and you know, many of them, and choice, and also not choice. You know, we talk about mental health, we talk about these issues. It's far more complex than just
everyone's got a mental health problem now. No, they don't know. No, you can choose to do absolutely bugger all day, but you don't do it on my dime. If you want to not be a contributor, I think you're immoral. I think people who are able-bodied are immoral for not working. But if you're choosing to do it, but I choose not to pay taxes to pay for you to not do it.
That's down to your definition, your idea of who is deemed acceptable to work or not. And
what do you mean, who's deemed acceptable to work or not? Do you genuinely believe that more young men and women aged, in their early 20s right now, today, are unable to work than say, in the 1960s? Are you kidding me?
No, but it's
exactly?
It's just that those people in the 1960s didn't have the choice and were forced into it.
Didn't have the choice. Sorry. Let's just back up here. James, as a former Labour Party spokesman, are you seriously telling me that you think that able-bodied young adults should have the choice about whether to go to work to pay their bills or to sit at home and ask other people who do go to work to pay their bills? Are you saying that should be a legitimate legal choice for people in this country?
It should be a legitimate legal choice to choose whether you prioritise your health. And mental health is not separate from physical health. It's the same thing.
By the way, all the evidence shows that actually work is very good for people, so you actually want to prioritise people's mental health.
That's different for everyone, Julia. I mean,
pretty much across the board, that is actually very...
It is. Julia, I would always thank myself and thank my lucky stars that you're not in charge of the DWP and you don't get.
Oh, I tell you what, the nation would be thanking me every single day. They'd be coming up to me and shaking my hand if I was in charge of the DWP, mate. Yeah. Because their taxes would have gone down.
But I really do feel that compassion needs to be at the centre of this.
Compassion? No. You're talking about compassion for people who would rather sit on the sofa and expect other people to go to work, often in back-breaking work.
Who don't have a choice.
They don't have a choice.
No. I mean, if you're crippled with anxiety, if you're crippled with depression, if you've got
most people aren't crippled with anxiety or depression. You're out of work.
Complex trauma. If you've got various different issues, we're trying to talk in the round about. But
you think that uniquely. So not only do more people suddenly in this day and age, in the 21st century, do more people and young people have those mental health problems than for instance, the men who fought in wars, people who survived under rationing. You think they have? No, it's not. And you think that we uniquely in this country have a bigger mental health problem that's totally legitimate than every other Western nation, because the stats are off the scale for our country. Yeah. Do you actually believe that is real?
I've seen the impact of a generation, i.e. yours, that grew up not taking its mental health seriously, not having access to therapy or services.
And then we just got on with it, mate.
That generation is ruined with
is it? I think we're much happier than younger people.
It's still continuing to pass on that trauma to their children and to their grandchildren now. Many of them have not dealt with their own stuff, with their own issues, and they're completely dysfunctional.
Okay, you can. Lots of people may have had childhood trauma, maybe dealing with stuff and anxiety, but you know what? They still went out to work.
Great, lovely.
Yeah, great. Yeah, contributing, paying for their own kids, paying for themselves.
If I say to you, look, you can't afford to take today off, even though
lots of people can't afford to take today off.
Well, that's great, Joe, but that's not the world I want to live in. Respectfully, I want to live in a world.
But James, if we all take today off because we're having a duvet day and don't feel great, if we're all taking the day off, who's paying for everything?
We're not, though, are we? You're saying that.
But you said you said we should all have the choice.
We should all have the choice, and we do all have the choice.
We don't. But mate, there are millions of people in this country who are not in staff jobs. They don't get paid if they don't turn up to work. There are people who turn up to work the day after, their loved one dies, things like because they don't have the choice. And you're saying, wouldn't it be great if everyone had the choice all the time? But that's not how life works.
Oh, I know, but it can be, Julia, and that's what we're talking about here. We can move closer. I'm not talking about a utopia. I'm not talking about a world where no one works. I'm talking about a world where compassion.
Why would anyone? Why would I'm lucky. I do a job that I love doing. But I've done plenty of jobs that I didn't enjoy doing. Okay, so when I was chopping onions and garlic all day at a burger takeaway, and I was on a Saturday when I was a teenager, right? So if I had the option to go and do that and be paid whatever it was, 20 quid for the day or whatever it was, or not do it, but I could get paid to not do it because someone else would pay because I'd be on benefits. Which do you think I'd choose?
Are you seriously telling me that you would choose to work? So if you won the lottery tomorrow and you were in a manual labour job, right? You would choose to continue doing that manual labour job.
It's amazing how many people do. No, my point is, I wouldn't choose.
No, that's the problem with your generation.
But James, Julia. I'm just pointing out.
You've got this slavish obedience to your employers.
I'm renowned for that. Honestly, talk to my employers. I'm renowned for that.
Somehow, an ideological thing where you're like, work's the most important thing. Listen, I don't care.
No, actually, my family is the most important thing. But one of the reasons my family is important is I'm able to support them.
Great, but if you can support them through any other means, sometimes it's about working smarter than it is about working harder.
But James, my point was, you got the wrong end of the stick. I said, if someone's going to pay me 20 quid when I was 16 to chop onions all day, or 20 quid to sit on my backside all day, I'd go and sit on my backside all day. But if everyone makes that choice, no one's there chopping the onions and no one's doing anything else.
Everyone is making that choice. And this comes down to a fundamental question that we need to ask ourselves. Why do we want people to chop onions?
Because people want bunions on their burgers.
Great.
People want to buy burgers. No one's going to make the burgers. No one's going to have the money to buy the burgers. Our entire economy. Are we all going to go and live in caves?
You don't wake up as someone one day and go, do you know what it is? Do you know what my calling in life is? It's to provide someone with chopped onions for their burger.
But here's my thing.
I want to really go and help Julia Hartley-Brewer on our lunch break have a nice burger while she's sitting in a radio studio, No one does that, Julia. Wake up. You have to realise
it's an example of a job which you were talking about manual labour. And by the way, I think quite disparaging. Who would continue in a manual labour job if they had the money and didn't? I know lots of people who do manual labour who are very proud of the jobs they do. And frankly, they're more essential personnel than you are and than I am in terms of keeping this country going. But this is the thing. This attitude, this idea that everyone should have the choice. It's all very well on a lovely summer's day. We all have the choice to not work, but someone's got to do stuff.
It's the basic principle that Nye Bevan came up with when he founded the NHS, and that was that if you are sick, if you are ill, if you are unable to work, and you still have to work,
they are able.
No civilized
they
society.
are. No, my point is they are able to work, unless you think we are uniquely mentally ill in this country.
That's your opinion, though.
No, it's not my opinion. Do you believe if we have stats that are off the scale for young people who claim to have mental health problems, they are out of kilter with every other Western nation? Do you think that is because A, we are uniquely mentally ill in this country, or B, young people are swinging the lead?
They're not swinging the lead. We need to look at the
So you think we are uniquely mentally ill in this country?
Look at the quality of life in this country. Look at the way things have been run. We have 15 years of austerity. We had absolute hopelessness in communities that were given nothing. You think it's funny and you think I'm mad for it. I get it, all right? But I equally think you're insane for thinking that people
should go to work.
An entire generation of people just don't want to work, right? But if I've got anxiety, if I've got depression, I wake up in the morning, it's a struggle to stay alive. It's a struggle to not kill myself. Frankly, I've got four friends who I went to school with are all dead now, who've killed themselves.
That's horrific.
Right? That's horrific. It's an absolute crisis, right? If you wake up and that's the choice on the table, and you think, am I going to? Then of course, the whole world is.
I would say to you, and horrible to that four friends of yours have taken their lives. I would say that part of the problem in terms of the mental health that does actually exist, that is real as opposed to the swinging the lead, and there is that, is actually the way we tackle the mental health issues these days, and actually the attitude attitude that a lot of people like you have, which actually I think makes the problem worse, not better. I'm going to have to leave it there because I've got to go. I've got to talk to Philip. I've got to go to break. But Matthew, we didn't even get on to the Prime Minister at the PMQs yesterday. We haven't got there, but so appreciate you joining us. I am utterly flabbergasted. And if you could have seen Philip Ingram's face throughout that, everyone, it was an absolute picture. Where's the start, Philip?
Oh, great. Well, I'm going to start with the mental health bit because you know I've suffered. I've suffered from depression. I've suffered from PTSD. I didn't miss a day of work, so I feel insulted by what James was saying. That you have.
Why
to
was
have
that
this...
important to you?
Because it gave me a focus. It gave me something to be able to continue to keep that front going that was keeping me alive. If I had been
the structure, the purpose in life.
Exactly. If I had been having duvet days and been at home,
Yeah.
I'd be dead. There's no two ways about that.
Yeah.
I would have killed myself. So James's attitude I do find insulting. When it comes to jobs and bits and pieces, let's look at Europe. And I keep talking about Germany, but that's because I lived there for 13 years. Germany. You go and sign on for benefits. They will give you a period of time that you're on benefits, and then they will send you off to the job centre to get jobs. You will get 3 job offers that are in there, and if you don't accept any of the 3 job offers, they then give you a job, and you have to attend it. It's only part-time, but you have to attend it to continue to get your benefits.
No, again, it's not. He talked about this being slavery. No,
that's
you
not
can
slavery.
do what you want.
Yeah,
You just
exactly.
don't have the right to do anything you want
correct.
without someone else paying for it. Deep sighs. Lots of reaction. I know, we're all surprised. Lots of reaction coming into what James Matthewson had to say.